A wild Mustang trapped, its powerful body tangled in rusted barbed wire, its spirit dimming with each passing hour. No one knew how long it had been suffering, how long it had been fighting alone. Most people would have called animal control, too afraid to approach such a magnificent but dangerous creature. But one rancher stepped forward. What happened next was something no one could have predicted, a story of courage, trust, and an unforgettable bond that would change both their lives forever. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Texas rangeland as Mitchell Morgan drove his weathered pickup truck along the fence line of his family's ranch. At 58, Mitchell had seen almost everything these 10,000 acres could throw at him. 3 generations of blood, sweat, and determination had built this place into one of the most respected cattle operations in South Texas. Mitchell had been up since 4 a.m., checking fence lines before the heat set in. His border collie Rex was recovering from a rattlesnake bite, so Mitchell rode alone. He'd spent most of his adult life in solitude after his wife Mary passed 5 years ago. The land was his companion now. But that morning, something was different. A desperate whinnying, sharp and pained, carried on the morning breeze. Mitchell slowed the truck, scanning the horizon. Then he saw it. About 50 yards from the road, caught in old barbed wire fencing, was a wild Mustang. Mitchell's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't seen a wild horse on his property in over a decade. This mare was magnificent, easily 15 hands high, with a chestnut coat that gleamed through the dust. Her cream mane was long and wild, tangled with brush and grass. But what broke Mitchell's heart was the state she was in. The barbed wire had wrapped around her front leg and chest like a cruel trap, cutting deep welts into her flesh. Dark stains of dried blood matted her coat where she'd struggled for what must have been hours. The mare's sides heaved with exhaustion, foam gathering at the corners of her mouth. Her right front leg bore the worst damage, with barbs cutting through to muscle. Mitchell could see the white gleam of tendon beneath the wounds. For a moment their eyes met. Mitchell had looked into the eyes of countless horses throughout his life, but this was different. In those dark, intelligent eyes, he saw pain and fear, yes, but also something he'd rarely witnessed in a wild animal, a desperate plea for help. The mare let out another plaintive whinnying, not aggressive or warning, but pleading. Mitchell felt something twist deep in his chest. This magnificent creature was slowly dying because of human neglect. That old fence should have been repaired years ago. Mitchell's heart hammered as he weighed his options. The smart thing would be to call animal control. They had tranquilizer guns, experience with dangerous animals, proper equipment. A wild Mustang could easily kill a person with one well-placed kick. But as he looked into those dark eyes again, he felt time slipping away. The mare was dehydrating fast in the Texas heat, already climbing toward 90 degrees. Her breathing was becoming more labored by the minute. If he waited for authorities to arrive, she'd be dead before anyone could cut the first strand of wire. Mitchell made his choice. He grabbed his wire cutters from behind his seat. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "Son, sometimes being a rancher means you have to do things that scare you." His boots hit the hard-packed dirt, and he began walking slowly toward the trapped mare, speaking in low, calming tones. "Easy there, girl. Easy now. I know you're scared, but I'm here to help." The mare's ears flicked toward him. Her nostrils flared wide, catching his scent. Human, but also horse. Leather, hay, and the honest smell of a man who'd spent his life working with animals.
"Easy, girl," Mitchell murmured, as he knelt slowly beside the trapped animal. "I'm gonna help you, but this is gonna hurt." Up close, the damage was even worse. The wire was twisted, creating a vicious tangle that had tightened with every movement. Some barbs had buried themselves so deep they disappeared entirely into her flesh. The wounds were ragged and dirty, contaminated with rust and debris. Mitchell's hands trembled as he positioned the wire cutters, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. One slip could sever an artery. The mare could bleed out in minutes. The first strand was wrapped around her chest. Mitchell could feel the mare's heart pounding against his arm as he worked. Her skin twitched at his touch, but she didn't pull away. With careful pressure, he squeezed the handles. The old wire was tough, and when it finally snapped, the sound was sharp and metallic. The mare flinched violently, letting out a sharp whinny. For a terrifying moment, her head swung toward him, and he saw the whites of her eyes. Every muscle coiled, ready to strike. Mitchell froze, certain that his rescue attempt was about to become his death sentence. But then something extraordinary happened. Instead of striking, the mare lowered her head slightly, as if giving him permission to continue. The gesture was so deliberate that Mitchell felt tears prick his eyes. "You understand, don't you? You know I'm trying to help." Wire by wire, Mitchell worked with painstaking care. Each cut brought fresh pain, and each time the mare would flinch and tremble, but never lash out. Her trust was absolute and humbling. The sun climbed higher, and sweat dripped from Mitchell's forehead. His back ached from the awkward position, but he didn't dare take a break. The mare was weakening with each passing minute. When he reached the final strand, Mitchell hesitated. This wire had been there longest, had cut deepest. Removing it was going to cause excruciating pain. "I know this is going to be bad, girl, but it's the last one. After this, you'll be free." The mare turned her head to look directly at him, and Mitchell saw something in her eyes that took his breath away. It wasn't just trust. It was gratitude. With a final careful squeeze, Mitchell cut the last wire. It sprang free with violent force. The mare reared her head and let out a powerful neigh that echoed across the rangeland, not of pain this time, but of triumph. She was free. Mitchell scrambled backward, giving her space, certain she would bolt. But instead, the Mustang carefully tested her injured leg, taking tentative steps. Blood dripped steadily from her wounds, but she was mobile. Then she did something that shattered every assumption Mitchell had about wild horses. She walked directly to him and lowered her head until her muzzle was inches from his face. Her breath was warm against his cheek, and for a moment they simply looked at each other. All the barriers between human and animal dissolved in that single moment of connection. But Mitchell's elation was short-lived. As he looked at the mare's injuries, reality set in. She was badly wounded, dehydrated, and vulnerable. Infection was almost certain without proper treatment. "We're not done yet, are we?" he said quietly. "You need medical attention, and you need it fast." Mitchell retrieved his first aid kit and water from his truck. Moving slowly, he began cleaning the worst wounds, pouring clean water over the deepest cuts. The mare shuddered, but stood perfectly still. When Mitchell offered water cupped in his hands, she drank gratefully. The simple act of trust moved him more than he'd expected. He called his veterinarian, Dr. Samantha Collins. "A wild Mustang?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Mitchell, wild horses can be incredibly dangerous, especially when injured." "Samantha, you should see her," Mitchell replied. "She's trusting me. She knows I'm trying to help." While they waited, Mitchell created a makeshift shelter using his truck and a tarp. The mare moved under the shade when he gestured, without hesitation. "You're full of surprises," Mitchell murmured. "Most horses would have run the moment they were free." The mare turned her head toward him, and Mitchell could have sworn she was trying to communicate something specific. Her dark eyes held an intelligence that went beyond mere instinct. Dr. Collins arrived 2 hours later, taking one look at the scene and shaking her head in wonder. "Mitchell Morgan,
In all the years I've known you, you've never failed to surprise me." The treatment took over 2 hours. Dr. Collins cleaned each wound, applied antibiotic ointment, and sutured the deepest cuts. The mare flinched occasionally, but never tried to pull away. "She's going to need daily wound care for at least 2 weeks, antibiotics twice a day, fresh bandages, and complete rest. If she tries to run before she's healed, she could do permanent damage." "I'll take care of her," Mitchell said without hesitation. Mitchell moved the mare to a quiet paddock behind the main barn. To his amazement, she followed him willingly, limping but moving steadily forward. That first night, Mitchell barely slept. He checked on the mare every few hours. Each time he found her resting peacefully, lifting her head to acknowledge his presence with a soft nicker. By the 3rd day, a routine had developed. Mitchell arrived at dawn with fresh hay and grain, checked her wounds, and applied new bandages. The mare, whom he'd started calling Spirit, began approaching the fence when she saw his truck coming. As the days passed, Spirit's wounds healed remarkably well. Dr. Collins was amazed at her progress. "She's bonding with you, Mitchell. This isn't just tolerance. She genuinely seems to care about you." Mitchell had noticed it too. Spirit followed him around the paddock, staying close. When he sat down to rest, she would stand nearby, sometimes lowering her head to blow warm breath across his hair. One evening, Mitchell heard hoofbeats in the distance. A small herd of wild horses appeared on the ridge above the ranch, watching the paddock where Spirit stood. His heart clenched. Her family had found her. Spirit raised her head high and let out a long, piercing whinny. The horses on the ridge answered, but Spirit didn't try to escape. She called to her herd, but she stayed close to Mitchell. For 3 weeks, Mitchell tended to Spirit with complete dedication. The bond between them deepened daily. She would follow him like a devoted dog, her muzzle often resting on his shoulder. One particularly meaningful moment came during a difficult day for Mitchell. The anniversary of Mary's death was approaching, and he'd been feeling especially lonely. He sat in the paddock, lost in grief. Spirit approached slowly and carefully lowered herself to the ground beside him, resting her head in his lap. She remained there for over an hour, offering silent companionship. "Mary would have said you were sent to me," he whispered. During her 3rd week of recovery, Dr. Collins declared Spirit ready to return to the wild. Physically, there's no reason she can't resume her normal life. Mitchell nodded, his throat tight. He'd known this day would come. That evening, Mitchell sat in the paddock with Spirit for what might be the last time. "I have to let you go. You belong out there with your family."
Spirit looked toward the ridge where her herd waited, then back at Mitchell, her eyes filled with understanding. On a crisp morning in early October, Mitchell opened the paddock gate wide. Spirit stood in the center, looking between the open gate and Mitchell. "You're free, girl," Mitchell said. "It's time to go home." Instead of rushing toward freedom, Spirit walked slowly to Mitchell. She nudged his shoulder gently, then rested her head against his chest. Mitchell wrapped his arms around her neck. "You've reminded me what it feels like to have purpose again," he whispered. Spirit pulled back and looked directly into his eyes. Then she stepped through the gate. She didn't run immediately. She walked to the edge of Mitchell's property and paused, turning back. Mitchell raised his hand in a small wave, and Spirit tossed her head once, then galloped toward the distant hills. Mitchell watched as she crested the ridge and was welcomed back into her herd. As the horses disappeared, Mitchell felt a complex mixture of loss and fulfillment. In the weeks that followed, Mitchell found himself changed by his experience with Spirit. The ranch didn't feel quite so empty anymore. He began volunteering with a local wildlife rescue organization. But the most remarkable part of the story was far from over. 3 months after Spirit's release, Mitchell was checking fence lines when he heard a familiar sound, a soft nickering that made his heart skip. Spirit emerged from the forest, but she wasn't alone. Beside her trotted a younger horse, a colt with the same intelligent eyes and proud bearing. "You came back to show me your baby," Mitchell murmured. Spirit walked directly to the fence, close enough for Mitchell to admire her colt, as if sharing this precious part of her life with the human who had given her a second chance. Over the following years, Spirit would occasionally appear on his property, sometimes alone, sometimes with her growing family. These visits became a source of deep joy for Mitchell. When people asked Mitchell about the most important thing that had ever happened on the ranch, he would tell them about a morning when he heard a cry for help and chose to answer it. He would describe the moment when a wild creature decided to trust him and how that trust had changed both their lives forever. For Mitchell, the most important part wasn't the rescue itself. It was what Spirit had taught him about healing, about trust, and about the courage required to love something enough to let it go. Some connections can't be explained by logic or science. This isn't just a story about a rancher saving a wild horse. It's a story about how, sometimes, in saving another being, we save ourselves. On quiet mornings when the wind is just right, Mitchell still hears it, a distant whinnying carried on the breeze. Spirit is calling back from somewhere in the vast rangeland, letting him know she's safe, she's free, and she remembers. Mitchell always raises his coffee cup in a quiet salute to the horizon, because some friendships don't require words or proximity. They just require trust, courage, and the wisdom to know that the greatest acts of love sometimes mean letting go. Thanks for galloping along with us on another incredible horse story adventure. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps us share these amazing horse stories with fellow equestrians and animal lovers everywhere. Got a horse story of your own? Drop it in the comments below. We love hearing from our community. Don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss our latest horse adventures. Until next time, keep riding toward your dreams, and remember, every horse has a story worth telling.